Hey, and welcome to today's video. Today, we'll be making this simple circle cutting jig. I actually made this a few weeks ago, but while editing the video last night, I realized I didn't do an intro, so here's a fantastic intro for my first jig on this channel. So, for this jig that I'm making, I've obviously got my big router out, but I also needed some wood. Now, I don't really have any nice plywood, at least an offcut, but I do have this offcut from the router table. Still, I've got loads of offcuts from the router table of MDF. Now, it's not the best material, although this is fairly strong because it's quite thick, 16 mils. So the idea is that I'll use this as the base. The basic principle is at one end you put the router table, at the other end you put a pivoting thing so it acts like a compass. I've watched various different kinds of jigs and ways of doing this. I've chosen for the simplest option for what I needed. I need to make a fairly large circle in a future project for Max's bedroom. Well, multiple actually, and that'll be a whole video in itself. However, I didn't want to make a too fancy jig. I'm going to make one that's fit for purpose for that. But there's a few things that I do in this one that, some of the nicer things that I've taken from others. But yeah, basic principle is I need to build like a pivoting pin out of this, and I'll explain that in detail. That slides along somewhere here so I can set the depth and then create something that I can mount the router on here. And for that, I'll use this trim bushing or whatever they're called. This is in essence so you can copy something without needing a specific bit for it. And the idea is that there's a hole in this side where the router just slots in so that I can freely move the router. But it should all be very self-explanatory. I always say this, but this should be a fairly straightforward build, especially with the design that I have. So let's get cracking. So the first thing I need to do is work on this. The idea is that at the bottom there'll be a channel where I can in essence have this thing ride along. But obviously these countersink bits, I don't actually know what they're called, sorry. So obviously these bits here, they have these little tiny hooks, right? And for those, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and see if I can break them off with a plier. And then that can be the thing that rides in there. The other thing I'll need to do is this screw. It shouldn't have an end bit like that. It should have one pointy bit and one just sort of maybe file down bit. So the idea is that you can either use a pointy bit or you drill a hole where the screw fits in. So let me go and do those two parts so that this element is done. So I marked the center line. I know it looks a bit of a mess, but I know what's going on. And this is the point where I'll drill the hole for the bushing. Now, for the channel, I don't mind it being all the way up until, like, say, here. But the inner bit, I'll have to route from here to approximately sort of the other edge, somewhere there. So what I will do is I'm just going to mark the center line, and I'm going to mark this stop on the edges. So why do I do that? Is because that's roughly where I want me to stop routing with the routing bit. I'll obviously, when the routing bit comes out here, I'll see that. But for the channel underneath, I won't see it. And that should give me plenty of space. It does mean I can't do any circle smaller than this distance, but that's fine. So what you'll see next is I'll drill this hole and I'll route the channels first. I don't need to drill this until later. I'll route the channels in here for our guiding pin to sit. So let's get on with that. Now the idea is that this thing should, TM, quite comfortably fit in there. There we go. And now, what we can do is from the other side, is turn in that pin. Put that there. Perfect. All right. So now you stick the pin through, so it sticks out underneath, and then on here, we just attach the wing nut, and you tighten it, and that's not gonna move, and that's the thing that you insert and pivot a bit around that. So next step, drill the hole and make it look pretty, and we're done. Okay, the next thing I want to do is just make this a little bit prettier. So I'm gonna like do a profile, etc. But that's nothing too special, you know. Let's have a look, or we can make it nice. Okay, so there we have it. I mean, I've still got pencil markings on, but I don't really care. Yeah, I've now set this like that, so the pin is sort of sticking out of that end. And I've just taken this scrap wood. It's the only one I have. I don't really have a big one, nor do I have something to put underneath, so let's hope I don't run into my table. But the idea is you just drill a hole in the middle. You insert the pin into that, so it pivots around. You see there's no play. It pivots around that, and then bam, you put your router on here and start plunging, and off you go. The beauty is that this has a bit of freedom to turn on the jig so that the cable doesn't tangle around. So that was one of the things that I wanted to try with this bushing, and it seems to be working. So let's do a test cut and see how it works. Okay, so my lovely router was clogged with sawdust, and you can see it's also in here. I forgot this bit is a bit that pushes down, so I'm gonna just quickly replace it with another bit. This one cuts better, but this is not designed for this because it's supposed to spew it out, not push it up. So I will swap that out, and let's see if we can continue the cut. For what it's worth, it works really, really well. So here we've got a circle, but let me just redo all of that again. So I have another problem. I need a longer bit for this demonstration, as this bit, which will fling it all out, is not deep enough, so it doesn't stick out far enough to do this cut. So now, demonstration over. I'll have to do it with this cut. I need to add the dust extraction, so I'll be back with that. Okay, let's try this again. So, I guess this is why I make this channel, is to learn from my mistakes. So, first off, this thing really works well. Second off, you really need to use the right router bit, because I nearly had a fire start in the MDF. Let me see if I can. Ooh, this is super hot, man. You can see here my lovely, oh, it's hot, router jig is full of soot. So here we have my router bit. Let me see if you can focus on that. Still, no, face away. So you see it's still got a bit of soot on. I can scrape it off. It's still sharp as hell, which in essence is a good thing. It is my most expensive bit. It's like 30 euros. It's like, it costs more than all the other bits together, just because it is such a strong carbide tipped, I think it's carbide tipped blade. So the idea with this is I bought this specifically for the bed that I'll be making for Max, because it drills this way, but it shoots the sawdust the opposite way of what I need for this. So this one shoots it down. I need one that pulls it up so that the suction can get it. So right now the motion of this is pushing it down, but the suction is pulling it up. It just wouldn't work. Hence I had the fire. But this is why I have this channel, so people learn from my mistakes, so you don't have to burn down your workshop. The jig is fine at first. You see a little bit, like a tiny bit of heat damage there. Or is it more? I think it's just caked on dust. But yeah, the jig itself works fine, and I can definitely use that for the big circles that I'll be doing. There, I'm just trimming off the outside edge, which I'll be doing over open space, so there's a lot of space to knock it out. The problem I had here, which was a cause, was the circle that I'm cutting. I couldn't go all the way through with this bit. Actually, I could have, but I didn't want to hit my table. So I decided not to, and then here you can see, I hope you can see it here. This is where, obviously, the sawdust trapped and the fire caught. But the jig works. I mean, you can have a perfect circle. This will be super useful, and you'll see it in that future project when I do it in a few weeks' time. But overall, I think this was a success, even though mostly a success. The jig is a success. It's simple. This mechanic, I got this from Colin Knecht. There's loads of different ways of doing this, but you know, it's the simplest for me. It doesn't have to be super precise. I don't care about measuring. You know, it does its job, and it's a nice little hack of building one of these. There's loads of other ways, but it would have been way more involved than I wanted to do, to be honest. And this will serve me for quite a long time. But yeah, I think that's a wrap. Please, as always, subscribe and like, really helps me. And, you know, any comments, any feedback, you know, any tips, leave them down below. And in the meantime, I'll catch you later. Can't believe I nearly burnt my shop down